volunteer-powered, collectively run project. And we're really excited to have you here tonight. It's going to be an amazing event. And also wanted to throw in that this is a free event, but all of this amazingness in these tough economic times needs to be financially powered. So if you want to throw something in the bucket, that would be amazing. I'm just going to pass it around. Okay, so tonight we're going to have an amazing conversation about labor organizing, especially in these economic times, and we have an awesome panel for you. Leaders of many labor movements, and they're really amazing. Daniel Gross, Liberte Locke, and Raymundo Lara Molina. Yay! And so they're going to be talking to you about anti-authoritarian organizing around transformative workplace demands. Gross is a workers' rights attorney and author of Labor Law for Rank and Flyer. Locke is a barista and rank-and-file leader of the Industrial Workers of World campaign. And Molina is a former sweatshop worker and leader of the campaign against the prominent seafood supplier Wild Edibles. So please welcome them. Thank you so much.
So in Labor Law for the Rank and Filer, Staunton and I argue for the idea that workers are most powerful when they're part of member-controlled unions that feature workers themselves as protagonists of social change. So the best way to understand it, I think, unfortunately, is in contrast to the traditional union. In a traditional union, workers delegate the authority to paid representatives, full-time staff, if you want to use the more euphemistic term. Others might call them union bureaucrats. These are people not regularly employed at the workplace who nonetheless are supposedly empowered to represent workers in exchange for a fee, frankly. It's similar, maybe you can think of it like sort of an insurance policy. You know, I pay these people who run this service, and if something goes wrong, they're supposed to help me out. What Staunton and I argue for is something we call solidarity unionism, actually a term that he coined, which really is a repudiation of this staff-driven service provider model. It's a unionism which we believe not only is the most effective way to improve wages, improve working conditions, and more importantly, in my view, I think affirm our dignity as workers, but also we think for those of us here, I would imagine the majority of people here who believe in dramatic social change more broadly, we believe this type of unionism is more compatible with that kind of change for many reasons, the most important of which is in a solidarity union, you don't have an unaccountable leadership which can be easily co-opted. And that's what you see again and again with the business unions. You have a sort of a system where union bosses tame the workforce and act as a mediator between the boss and the workers, and more often than not, instead of facilitating militant activity, the union bureaucrats actually stifle it. And in that sense, I would argue, are representing the interests of the bosses and not our interests. So we're in the midst of an economic crisis caused by the corporations, and that's sort of our theme tonight. But what I want to say about that first is those of us in the world of low-wage work know very well that before this economic crisis, we were already hurting. We were already struggling to pay rent. We were already loaded with consumer debt or student debt, and we, some of us may have, faced or come very close to bankruptcy because of, say, healthcare costs. So all of this was true for many working Americans and workers around the world before the economic crisis. After the economic crisis, those factors have gotten worse. That's true. But I think there's something more significant than that, because when you're already so close to the bottom, there's not too much farther you can go. What I think is more critical is that folks have seen the dirty hands of the corporations in the struggles of their daily lives. The corporations got sloppy. I'm going to submit to you tonight. Usually they're a little bit more savvy about their exploitation in the United States with their slick PR. But in this case, they got sloppy. They sunk the economy. And even as they were sinking it, they were looting millions, billions, trillions of dollars from workers, from consumers, and from taxpayers. So I think because of that, yes, the conditions of poverty have worsened, and more importantly, the dirty hands of the corporation have been seen. Because of that, I think this is just a really opportune time for transformative organizing practices. What I mean by that is not only piecemeal demands, but bold demands which actually cut into this idea that property is sacred. And a good example of that is a demand to end evictions, even if it's just for a year, or a demand to end foreclosures, even if it's just for a year. Because not only is that great for the tenant, but it also starts this analysis of, wait, is property really sacred? Is it really a sacred thing that can't be contested by people and by movements? So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited for the conversation we're gonna have here tonight. I say it again and again, but the least political people I know, the people who used to spew all kinds of ridiculous rhetoric, right wing sometimes, those people are pissed now, and they're pissed at the corporations. So some of us that have been out there for some time, it's like, the corporations are dominating our life. I mean, it's horrible, can't you see? And we're written off to some extent. More and more folks are understanding that's what it's all about. I also want to say one thing about the book. If you're a labor nerd, you're definitely going to like the book. If you're thinking about fighting your boss, organizing against your boss, you're going to like it. You're going to want to have it. But I also think, even if you're working in other fields, the fundamental concept that the affected community in question, whatever community that is, it could be a community of tenants, it could be a community organized around sexual orientation, whatever community is, that affected community and its individual members should control their own organizations, their own campaigns, and they themselves should be the primary actors within those campaigns. Not self-appointed delegates, representatives, or leaders. That's not where the dramatic social change happens. Dramatic social change happens when rank and file folks, individual members, are empowered to make decisions, formulate demands, act, and fight. We've seen it again and again in this country. Some tremendous general strikes, which a few years ago maybe were unimaginable, but as we progress in this economic crisis, see more and more seem to be in closer proximity.